The sterile white hallway of a hospital is a place of agonizing suspense. For Mark Harrington, that suspense was twofold. Behind one set of doors, his pregnant daughter, Sarah, was fighting for her life and the life of her unborn child in an emergency C-section. But in the courtyard, just 50 feet away, his son-in-law David was on one knee. He was holding a diamond ring, not for the wife in surgery, but for his mistress. And as Mark watched, frozen in horror, he realized the ultimate betrayal was happening, and he was the only one who could see it. The digital clock on the dashboard read 2:17 a.m. It glowed a hostile, bloody red, much like the series of traffic lights David accelerated through. "David, you have to slow down," Sarah gasped from the passenger seat. Her face, usually bright and freckled, was a mask of waxy, pale terror. Her hands were clamped around her swollen belly, as if she could physically hold her child and her life inside. "We're almost there, Sarah. Just breathe. Breathe like they taught us," David replied, his voice a tight, strained baritone. He gripped the steering wheel of his BMW, knuckles white, but his eyes were not on his wife. They were on the GPS, on the traffic, on the time. He was performing the role of a panicked husband, and he was performing it well. But from the back seat, Mark Harrington saw the cracks. Mark, Sarah's father, was a man carved from granite, a retired corporate lawyer who had seen the worst of people in boardrooms, but nothing had prepared him for the raw, animal fear he felt now. He was supposed to be in town for the baby shower. Instead, he was in the back of his son-in-law's car, watching his only child writhe in a pain that was clearly more than labor. It's not cramps, Dad," Sarah had cried an hour ago, collapsing at the top of the stairs. It's like fire." They had burst through the automatic doors of St. Jude's emergency room into a world of controlled chaos. A triage nurse, blessedly efficient, took one look at Sarah's chalk-white skin, her sky-high blood pressure reading, and the trace of blood on her maternity pants, and screamed for a gurney. 32 weeks pregnant, severe abdominal pain, hypertension, the nurse rattled off as they sprinted down the corridor. "Possible placental abruption or HELP. Get Dr. Chen in here, now!" The medical jargon was a foreign language, but the panic was universal. David ran alongside the gurney, holding Sarah's hand, whispering, "It's okay, baby. I'm right here. I love you." Mark, following behind, felt a cold stone settle in his gut. There was something in David's performance that rang false. It was too smooth. His hair was perfectly combed. His expensive watch glinted under the fluorescent lights. He looked less like a terrified husband and more like a man late for an important meeting. Sarah was wheeled into a trauma bay. The curtains were ripped shut, and the sounds began. The frantic beeps of monitors, the ripping of Velcro, the sharp, authoritative voice of the doctor. "Sarah, I'm Dr. Chen. Your blood pressure is 190 over 110. Your platelets are crashing. This is severe preeclampsia, and we suspect it's advanced to HELP syndrome. Your liver is in distress. We have to get this baby out. Now." "The baby?" Sarah's voice was a thin, reedy whisper. "Is my baby okay?" "The baby is in distress, Sarah. We need to do an emergency C-section. It's the only way to save you both." "David!" Sarah screamed, her hand shooting out from the curtain. David, who had been standing back near Mark, jolted and grabbed her hand. "I'm here, Sarah. I'm right here. I'm scared. Don't leave me." "I won't. I'm right here," he repeated, stroking her hair. But his eyes darted to the clock on the wall. "Sir, you'll have to wait outside," a nurse said, gently but firmly pushing David and Mark back. "We're taking her to OR3, right now." The door slammed shut, leaving the two men alone in the sterile, green-tiled hallway. The silence was deafening, broken only by a distant, rhythmic beep. "My God," Mark breathed, slumping against the wall, the adrenaline finally draining, leaving only a cold, sickening dread. He fumbled for his phone to call his ex-wife, Sarah's mother, who was on a flight from London. David, however, was already pacing. He ran a hand through his dark, styled hair. He looked annoyed, impatient. "This is just," David sighed. "It's just terrible timing." Mark's head snapped up. "Timing? David, she's—" I know," David said quickly, recovering. "I just mean, with the big quarterly review at the firm, I'm up for partnership. It's a lot." Mark stared at him. His daughter was on an operating table, her life and the life of his first grandchild hanging by a thread, and David was worried about a partnership? "I'm going to get some air," David said, not looking Mark in the eye. "And coffee. You want a coffee?" "No," Mark said, his voice flat. "I'm going to the surgical waiting room." "Right. Good idea. I'll be right there." David shoved his hands in his pockets and walked away, not toward the cafeteria, but toward the glass doors leading to the central hospital courtyard. Mark watched him go, the cold stone in his gut turning to ice. Something was wrong. David wasn't a panicked husband. He was a man checking his watch. He was a man looking for an exit. Mark's legal career had been built on one principle: never ignore your gut. He let David get a 30-second head start. Then, staying in the shadows of the hallway, he followed him. The surgical waiting room was on the 3rd floor, a sterile purgatory of beige chairs and old magazines. Mark found it empty, save for a flickering television muted on a 24-hour news channel. The large window overlooked the hospital's central garden, a small manicured square of green designed to offer a moment of peace. It was 3:05 a.m. Mark stood at the window, not for the peace, but because he could see the courtyard 2 floors below. And he could see David. David wasn't getting air. He was waiting. He was pacing under a lamp post, checking his phone every few seconds. He looked like a man waiting for a blind date, not a man whose wife was in surgery. A moment later, a figure slipped out of the side entrance from the parking garage. It was a woman. Even from a distance, Mark could see she was young, stylish, wearing a sharp trench coat over what looked like expensive work attire. She had long, sleek black hair. She ran to David, and he didn't hesitate. He pulled her into an embrace. Not a hug of comfort, but a deep, intimate, possessive kiss. Mark felt the air leave his lungs, the muted television, the hum of the vending machine, his own breathing. It all faded to a dull roar. He was paralyzed, a spectator to a betrayal so profound, so brazen, it felt unreal. He recognized the woman. It was Emily Vance, a junior associate at David's investment firm. Sarah had mentioned her. "She's brilliant," Sarah had said just last month. "A real shark. David says she's his protégé. Honestly, I think she's a bit much, but he says she's key to his promotion." Key to his promotion. Mark's blood ran cold. He watched, transfixed, as the two of them argued. He couldn't hear the words, only see the gestures. Emily was frantic, angry. She gesticulated wildly. David was trying to calm her, holding her arms. This was not a mistake. This was not a moment of weakness. This was an assignation. David had called her here. While his pregnant wife was being wheeled into an operating room, he had summoned his mistress to the hospital. Mark's instinct was to storm down there, to put his fist through David's perfect teeth. But his lawyer's mind took over, cold and sharp. Observe. Document. Do not act. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking so violently he could barely unlock it. He opened the camera and hit record, zooming in as much as he could. The image was grainy, backlit by the lamp-post, but it was unmistakable. Down in the garden, Emily Vance pulled away from David. "You said it would be over, David. You promised me. You said as soon as the baby was born, you would leave her." "Emily, shut up. Keep your voice down," David hissed, grabbing her arm. This changes things. She's sick, really sick. They're in surgery right now." "Oh my God," Emily whispered, but there was a flicker of something other than sympathy in her eyes. It was calculation. Is she going to—" "I don't know," David snapped. "I don't know, okay? This is a nightmare. The timing is a disaster. The partnership vote is next week. I can't have a massive, messy divorce right now. And I definitely can't have this." "A messy divorce?" Emily's voice rose to a shrill peak. "What about me, David? I've been waiting for 2 years. I moved into that apartment for us. I've put my reputation on the line for you. You told me Sarah was just an obligation, that the baby was an accident, that I was your future." "You are," David insisted, his voice dropping, becoming desperate, pleading. He was trying to manage her, the way Mark had seen him manage clients. Listen to me. This could be a good thing." "A good thing? Your wife and baby might be dying, and you think it's a good thing." "No. I mean, it simplifies things," David stammered, his sociopathy laid bare in the cold night air. If she doesn't make it, then there's no divorce. It's clean. It's tragic, yes, but it's clean. We just have to wait." Emily stared at him, horrified and intrigued. "And if she does make it, David? What then? You go back to playing the happy father, and I'm just the protégé in the background. I won't do it. I'm done." She turned to leave. David panicked. "No, wait!" He grabbed her. "Emily, don't you see? I'm choosing you. I've been choosing you." "Then prove it," she spat, her voice laced with venom. "Prove to me that I'm not just your fallback. Prove to me that if she walks out of that operating room, you're still mine. Prove it, or I walk right now, and I take that partnership with me." Mark, watching from the window, felt a new wave of nausea. "Take the partnership with me." She wasn't just his mistress. She had power over him. David stared at Emily, his face a mask of conflict, his ambition warred with his cowardice. He reached into his coat pocket. Mark thought he was reaching for his wallet. He wasn't. David pulled out a small, velvet box, a ring box. Mark's knees buckled. He gripped the windowsill to stay upright. "No," he wouldn't. "Not here. Not now." David opened the box. Even from 2 floors up, Mark could see the obscene sparkle of a large diamond. It was not Sarah's ring. "I was going to wait, Emily," David said, his voice thick with a fake, practiced emotion. "I was going to do this after the divorce was filed. But you're right. There's no more waiting." And as his wife was being cut open 2 floors above them, David Lowe dropped to one knee on the damp grass of the hospital garden. "Emily Vance," he said, his voice carrying in the quiet night. "I love you. You are my partner, my equal, my future. Will you marry me?" Emily's hands flew to her mouth. The anger melted into a triumphant, tearful smile. "Yes," she breathed. "Oh my God, David, yes." He slid the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a desperate, passionate kiss. Upstairs in the surgical waiting room, Mark Harrington stopped recording. His phone slipped from his numb fingers and clattered loudly onto the tile floor. Down in the garden, the kissing couple broke apart. They looked up. Startled by the sound, they looked right at the window. They saw Mark. His face was illuminated by the flickering television screen, his expression one of pure, unadulterated horror. David's face went white. Emily screamed. The betrayal was no longer a secret. It was a shared, undeniable, horrifying fact. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Mark, David, and Emily were frozen in a terrible tableau. The witness, the betrayer, and the accomplice, separated by 2 floors of glass and a chasm of indecency. David was the first to move. He shoved Emily behind him, as if to hide her, a pathetically useless gesture. His face was a rictus of pure panic. Emily, recovering her composure faster, simply stared up at Mark. Her expression wasn't guilt. It was defiance. It was the look of a shark that had just been spotted and was calculating whether to attack or flee. She chose to flee. She ripped her hand from David's, turned, and ran, disappearing into the darkness of the parking garage. David was trapped. He looked from the garage back up to the window. He was a rat, and Mark was the light. Mark's paralysis broke. It was replaced by a rage so cold, so pure, it burned away his shock. He didn't run. He didn't shout. He turned from the window, scooped up his phone, and walked with deliberate, measured steps to the elevator. He pressed the button for the ground floor. The ding of the elevator arriving was the loudest sound he'd ever heard. He stepped out into the main lobby and walked toward the courtyard doors. David was already there, bursting back inside, his face slick with sweat. He was trying to formulate a lie. Mark could see the words forming on his lips. Mark, thank God. You won't believe—" "Shut up." Mark's voice was not a shout. It was a low, guttural command, filled with so much venom that David physically recoiled. "It's not— that wasn't— she's just a colleague," David stammered, backing away. "She's unstable. She's obsessed with me. I was just trying to—" "I said," Mark repeated, stepping into David's personal space. "Shut up. You are not to speak. You are not to breathe in my direction." "You don't understand." "I understand," Mark hissed, "that while my daughter, your wife, is on an operating table, you were in that garden putting a ring on another woman's finger. I understand that you are a sociopath. I understand that you are a parasite. What I don't understand is how I am managing to stand here right now instead of ending your life with my bare hands." The intensity of Mark's fury was a physical force. David, who was taller than Mark by 3 inches, seemed to shrink, pressing himself against the wall. "Mark, please. Sarah. She can't know. It would kill her. You can't tell her. You're worried about her." Mark let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You disgusting—" "Mr. Harrington." A new voice cut through the tension. Both men turned. A man in blue scrubs, his mask down around his neck, was approaching them. He looked exhausted but calm. It was Dr. Chen. Instantly, the rage vanished from Mark's face, replaced by the raw fear he'd felt earlier. The betrayal, the garden, Emily. It all evaporated. Only one thing mattered. "My daughter," Mark choked out. "Is she—" Dr. Chen gave a small, tired smile. "Sarah is a fighter. It was Helpy syndrome, one of the worst cases I've seen. Her liver was failing, and her platelets were non-existent. We had to give her 9 units of blood. But she's stable. She's in recovery. She's going to be very, very sick for a few days. But she's going to make it." Mark sagged against the wall, his legs giving out. "Oh, thank God. Thank God." David, seizing the opportunity to reclaim his role, stepped forward. "And the baby? Is the baby okay?" Dr. Chen's smile widened. "You have a daughter. She's tiny, 3 pounds, 4 ounces, but she came out screaming. She's in the NICU and she's feisty. She's a fighter, just like her mum." A girl, David said, a strange, hollow look on his face. A girl. Mark watched him. There was no joy in David's expression. There was only complication. Another variable in his disgusting equation. "Can we see them?" Mark asked, pushing himself off the wall. "You can see Sarah in the recovery room in about 30 minutes. Just for a moment. She'll be in and out of consciousness. The NICU has strict protocols, but you can see the baby through the window right now. Floor 4. "Thank you, Doctor. Thank you for everything," Mark said, shaking the man's hand with all his strength. As Dr. Chen walked away, David moved toward Mark, his concerned husband mask slipping back into place. "Mark, let's go see our girl." Mark put a hand on David's chest, stopping him flat. The cold fury was back, but now it was tempered by a new, powerful resolve. "Our girl!" Mark's voice was pure ice. "You will not go near Sarah. You will not go near that baby. You will not set foot on the 4th floor. You will not go to the recovery room." "What? You can't. I'm her husband. I'm the father." "You are nothing," Mark snarled. "You are a piece of filth I just scraped off my shoe. Sarah is in critical condition. The shock of what you are, of what you've done, could cause a stroke. It could kill her. So here is what you are going to do, David." He stepped closer, forcing David to look him in the eye. "You are going to turn around. You are going to walk out of this hospital. You are going to go back to her. And you are going to wait. I will handle this. I will tell Sarah when she is strong enough." "You're kicking me out?" "Mark, that's your granddaughter in there. My daughter." "You have no daughter here," Mark said, his voice dropping to a whisper that was more terrifying than any shout. "You have no wife here. You lost those privileges in the garden. If you try to go near her room, I will call security. If you try to get past me, I will put you on the floor, and then I will have you arrested for assault. Am I clear?" David stared at Mark, his mind racing. He saw no bluff. He saw no room for negotiation. He saw a man who had just watched his entire world implode and was now holding the detonator. You can't just... "What will I tell people?" "I don't care," Mark said, turning his back on him. The ultimate dismissal. "I'm going to see my granddaughter." Mark walked to the elevator, his back straight, his steps measured. He did not look back. He did not see David stand there for a full minute, his face pale, before turning and walking, not running, out the front doors of the hospital, a defeated man. Mark stepped into the elevator, and the moment the doors closed, his composure shattered. He braced himself against the wall, his body racked with silent, agonizing sobs. He cried for his daughter's life, for his granddaughter's arrival, and for the devastating, impossible secret he now had to keep. The neonatal intensive care unit was another world. It was kept perpetually dim, a hushed cathedral of technology and fragile hope. The only sounds were the soft, rhythmic whoosh and beep of monitors. Mark had to scrub his hands and arms for 3 solid minutes before he was allowed to even enter the main bay. A nurse, with kind, tired eyes, led him to an incubator in the corner. "This is her. Baby girl low." Mark looked through the plastic shell, and his heart, which had been a knot of ice and rage, simply melted. She was perfect. She was impossibly small, a tiny bird-like creature swimming in a nest of white blankets. Her skin was translucent, her face blotchy and new. A tiny blue cap was perched on her head, and a web of wires monitored her every breath. As Mark watched, she stretched a minuscule starfish hand, her fingers no bigger than grains of rice. "Hello, little one," Mark whispered, pressing his hand to the hard plastic, as if he could send his love through it. "I'm your grandpa, and I've got you. I promise, I've got you." This was his new focus. This tiny 3-pound life. This was the anchor. The rage at David was still there, a simmering volcano. But this child and Sarah's recovery was the immediate shore. He spent an hour by the incubator just watching her breathe. He took a picture with his phone and sent it to Sarah's mother, who was on a layover in Chicago. A girl. Sarah is stable. Both are fighters. Finally, a nurse gently told him he could see Sarah in the post-op recovery area. She was floating in a fog of anesthesia and painkillers. Her skin was still a deathly pale, and an IV line snaked into her arm, but she was breathing on her own. Her eyes fluttered open as Mark touched her forehead. "Dad?" Her voice was a dry croak. "I'm here, sweetheart," Mark said, his voice thick. "The baby. She's beautiful, Sarah. A girl. She's so tiny, but she's perfect. She's in the NICU and she's a total fighter." A tear rolled down Sarah's temple. "A girl. We were right. Where's David? Is he?" Mark's blood froze. The lie he had practiced in the elevator came to his lips, tasting like ash. He was overwhelmed, sweetheart," Mark said, stroking her hair. He had to step out. An emergency at the firm, you know, with the partnership review. He was a wreck, but he had to go. It was a plausible lie. It was, in its own sick way, part of the truth. "Oh," Sarah murmured, her brow furrowing in a flicker of disappointment, but she was too exhausted to process it. "He's always working. Tell him to come. I want to name her. Lily. We liked Lily. Lily, it's beautiful," Mark said, fighting to keep his voice steady. "You rest now, Sarah. You just focus on getting strong for Lily. Okay, Dad? Love you." She was asleep again before he could reply. Mark sat by her bedside for the next 3 days. He was a sentinel, a guard dog. He slept in the hideously uncomfortable recliner. He lived on vending machine sandwiches and bitter coffee. He coordinated with Dr. Chen. He spoke to the NICU nurses, who began to call him Grandpa Mark. And he fielded David's calls. They came like clockwork, every 2 hours. Frantic, pleading, and then, slowly, angry. "Mark, you have to let me see my wife. This is insane. You're holding her hostage." Mark would walk out into the hallway, his voice a low monotone. "She's not strong enough, David. What are you telling her? What lies are you—" "I told her you had a work emergency, a lie you no doubt are very comfortable with. I suggest you stick to it. I have your wife's phone. She's not to be disturbed. Send your texts. I'll read them to her when I feel it's appropriate." You bastard! You're poisoning her against me." "No, David," Mark said, looking at the video on his phone, the one he watched every time his resolve wavered. "You did that yourself, in the garden, with the ring. Now, I have to go. Sarah's waking up." He would hang up. He screened Sarah's texts, deleting David's increasingly desperate, manipulative messages. "Sarah, your father is crazy. He's keeping me from you. I love you so much. I'm so scared. Please call me." Mark would then feed Sarah a curated version. "David sent his love. He's buried in meetings but said to kiss you and the baby for him." And Sarah, weak and trusting, would nod. Typical David. His timing is the worst. But he's a good man, Dad. He's just driven. "He is," Mark would reply, the lie searing his tongue. The secret was a living thing, a cancer in the room. Mark felt like a monster, lying to his daughter at her most vulnerable. But he also knew he was a shield. The doctor had been clear. Any severe emotional shock could send her blood pressure soaring. It could trigger a stroke or a seizure. She needs absolute calm. A video of her husband proposing to another woman was not calm. So Mark waited. He compartmentalized. He was Grandpa Mark to the nurses, Dad to Sarah, and a silent, looming executioner to David. And in the dark, quiet hours, when Sarah was asleep, he made calls. He didn't call his ex-wife. He didn't call a friend. He called his lawyer. "Michael," he said, his voice low, "I need you to find me the best, most vicious divorce attorney in the city. And I need a private investigator. The best one you've got. His name is David Lowe. His associate is Emily Vance. I want everything. I want their apartment. I want their financials. I want their emails. I want to know where they've been every second for the last 2 years. I want to know where every penny has gone. I want the screws." There was a pause on the other end. "Mark? What's going on? Is Sarah?" "Sarah and the baby are fine," Mark said, looking through the window at the NICU across the hall. "But I'm going to war, and I plan to win." Sarah's recovery was slow, but Lily's was remarkable. After a week, Sarah was strong enough to be wheeled to the NICU. Mark watched from the hallway as a nurse helped her hold her daughter for the first time. The kangaroo care, skin to skin. He saw his daughter, pale and weak, with stitches across her abdomen, burst into tears as the tiny 3-pound infant was placed on her chest. It was a moment of such pure, profound love that it momentarily eclipsed the darkness. "She's so real," Sarah whispered, tracing the baby's tiny ear. Mark smiled, but his heart ached. This perfect moment was built on a lie. David was still texting, and his narrative had changed. He was now the victim. "Sarah, I'm respecting your father's wishes that you rest. I'm dying inside. I'm at the office, just trying to hold it together. I love you both so much." Sarah, reading the text Mark had allowed through, sighed. "I feel so bad for him. He's all alone. He must be so scared." "He's handling it," Mark said. 2 days later, Sarah and Lily were discharged, not to the home she shared with David, but to Mark's sprawling, quiet house in the suburbs. The excuse was simple and believable. "Your house has too many stairs, sweetheart. You and Lily will stay with me. I have the nursery set up, and I've hired a private night nurse." Sarah, exhausted and overwhelmed by the needs of a preemie, gratefully agreed. David, of course, was furious. "She's my wife! That's my house!" he shouted at Mark over the phone. "And it's my daughter, who is still in a precarious medical state," Mark retorted. "You can see her when I say you can. I've told her you're preparing a huge welcome home for when she's stronger. She thinks you're being thoughtful. You are. Be careful, David. I'm the only one standing between you and total annihilation right now. Don't push me." The next day, a package arrived at Mark's house via courier. It was a thick 8810 manila envelope with no return address. "The PI as first report." Mark waited until Sarah and the baby were asleep with the night nurse. He went to his study, poured a 3-finger measure of scotch, and opened it. It was worse than he could have ever imagined. The betrayal wasn't just emotional. It was systemic. It was financial. It was total. The PI, a former FBI financial crimes investigator, had been surgical. The report was not a collection of grainy photos. It was a financial X-ray of David's life. David and Emily Vance had been having an affair for 18 months. Not 2 years, as Emily had claimed. 18 months. Mark did the math. Sarah had gotten pregnant during the affair. The baby had not been an accident, as David had told Emily. It had been, Mark suspected, Sarah's last-ditch attempt to save a marriage she felt was slipping away. But the photos were just the prelude. The real story was in the bank statements. David hadn't just been up for partnership. He had been leveraging his position, a position he held at a firm where Mark Harrington was a silent but significant investor. David and Emily, it turned out, were a team in more ways than one. The PI had uncovered a pattern. David would identify high-value, distressed assets in client portfolios. He would recommend a sell-off to a third-party holding company for pennies on the dollar to cut losses. That holding company, Vance Low Capital, was a shell corporation registered in Delaware. Its sole proprietors were Emily Vance and David Lowe. They were buying up clients' assets with other clients' money, which they were systematically embezzling through a series of consulting fees and expense reports. The new, sleek, downtown apartment in Emily's name. It had been purchased with money funneled from Sarah's own trust fund. David had forged Sarah's signature on a transfer authorization 3 months ago, moving $250,000 from their joint account, claiming it was for a low-risk bond investment. The ring he had proposed with. The PI had found the receipt from a high-end jeweler, Tiffany's. It was a 3-carat, flawless cushion cut. It cost $85,000. It had been purchased 2 days before Sarah's emergency C-section. David wasn't just planning to leave his wife. He was planning to leave her destitute. He and Emily were building a new life, and they were using Sarah's family money and his firm's clients to fund it. The proposal in the garden. It wasn't a moment of weakness. He'd had the ring in his pocket. He was just waiting for the right, dramatic moment to prove his commitment to Emily. Sarah's potential death was just convenient. Mark put the report down. He was no longer angry. He was something else entirely. He was cold. He was a predator who had just spotted his prey. This wasn't a divorce. This was a criminal conspiracy. This wasn't a family matter. This was wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny. He picked up his phone. He didn't call his divorce lawyer. He called the district attorney. "Jim," Mark said, his voice level. "It's Mark Harrington. I've got something for you. And it's big. I'm sending over a file on a Mr. David Lowe and a Ms. Emily Vance. I think you'll find the term racketeering to be appropriate." For a week, Mark lived a bizarre double life. By day, he was the doting grandfather, boiling bottles, changing diapers and forcing Sarah to eat. He watched her grow stronger. The color was returning to her cheeks. She was falling deeper in love with Lily, a fierce, protective maternal bond forming before his eyes, and she was growing more suspicious. "Dad, this is getting ridiculous," she said one afternoon, rocking Lily. "David's texts are just weird. They're all, 'I'm so busy, I love you.' He hasn't tried to come here. He hasn't once tried to just show up. Is he mad at me? Is it about the baby? Is he disappointed it's a girl?" "No, sweetheart, he's not mad at you," Mark said, his heart breaking. "Then what is it? You're keeping something from me. I'm not a child, and I'm not an invalid anymore. My incision is healing. I'm strong. Whatever it is, just tell me." Mark looked at his daughter. She had his eyes, and behind the exhaustion, he saw his own strength, his own stubbornness. She was ready. She deserved the truth. The lies were becoming more poisonous than the betrayal itself. He had coordinated with the DA's office. The arrests were planned for the next day. He had to tell her before she saw it on the news. "All right, Sarah," Mark said, sitting down opposite her. His voice was heavy. "The night nurse will be here in an hour. When she arrives, you and I are going to talk in the study, and I need you to brace yourself. It's not about you being sick. It's about David." Sarah's face tightened. I knew it. What did he do? Did he lose his job? Is he in some kind of trouble? Just wait. Let's get Lily settled. An hour later, the study doors were closed. The room was dark, panelled in cherry wood, smelling of old books and leather. It was the room where Mark had taught Sarah to read, to play chess, to sign her name. It had always been a sanctuary. Tonight, it was an execution chamber. "Dad, you're scaring me," Sarah said, her hands twisting in her lap. "Just rip the Band-Aid off." Mark didn't speak. He walked to his desk and picked up the PILS's report and the copy of the financial audit from the firm, which had conducted its own frantic internal investigation after Mark's call. He sat down and placed the thick, bound file on the coffee table between them. "What is that?" Sarah asked. Is that about David's partnership?" "In a way," Mark said quietly. "Sarah, what I'm about to tell you will be the hardest thing you have ever heard. I want you to know that I've known this since the night Lily was born. I kept it from you to protect your health. Not to control you, but to protect you." "Known what?" she whispered, her eyes wide. I don't know how to say it, Sarah, so I'm going to show you." He opened the report. He didn't start with the bank statements. He started with the pictures of David and Emily Vance, kissing outside a restaurant, going into the new apartment, their apartment, holding hands in a park. The dates on the photos went back over a year. Sarah stared at the first photo, her breathing hitched. That's Emily, his protégé. They're at a client dinner. It's just... Mark turned the page. A photo of them, taken through a window. They were in an apartment, toasting with champagne. David was kissing her neck. "No," Sarah whispered. It was a denial, not a question. "No, that's fake. Dad, what is this? This is sick." "It's not fake, sweetheart. His name is on the lease. Her name, too. They've been living there part-time for 6 months. He turned the page again. The bank statement. The $250,000 transfer from her trust fund. Her signature, forged. Sarah's face went white. She recognized the numbers. My trust. He told me that was for a bond fund. He said it was to secure Lily's college education. He used it for the down payment on their apartment, Sarah. Sarah began to tremble, a violent, full-body tremor. No. He loves me. He was so scared when I went into the hospital. He was holding my hand. Mark's face hardened. The moment he had dreaded, the one he had replayed in his mind 1,000 times, was here. Sarah. He wasn't scared. He was impatient. What do you mean? "The night you were in surgery," Mark said, his voice precise and cold. "I was in the waiting room. He said he was getting coffee. I followed him. He went to the garden." Sarah looked at him, uncomprehending. Emily Vance was there, Sarah. He had called her. They were arguing. She was demanding he prove he loved her, that he would leave you now that the baby was coming. "Stop," Sarah whispered, putting her hands over her ears. "Dad, stop." "He told her," Mark continued, his voice relentless, "that your complication might simplify things. That if you died, it would be clean." Sarah let out a small, strangled sound, like a dying animal. She told him to prove it, that she wouldn't wait. So he did. Mark reached into his pocket and pulled out his phone. He opened the video file, the grainy, terrible footage. He didn't hand it to her. He just held it, the screen glowing. "What is that?" "He had a ring, Sarah. Not your ring. A new ring. And while you were on that table, while my granddaughter was being born. He got down on one knee, and he proposed to her. He set the phone on the table. He didn't press play. Sarah stared at the phone, then at her father's face. She saw the truth there, in his tormented, loving eyes. She saw the lie he had been forced to carry. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She stood up, walked to the fireplace, and was violently, horribly sick. Mark was at her side in an instant, holding her hair back, his heart shattering into a million pieces. When she was done, she collapsed against him, her body limp. He wanted me to die, she whispered, her voice raw. While I was... Yes, Mark said, holding her. The texts, the I love yous. They were all lies, Sarah, all of it. He wasn't just cheating on you. He and Emily were systematically robbing you. They were robbing my firm. They were robbing our clients. This, he said, gesturing to the file, is a criminal indictment. Sarah pulled back, her face a mask of tear-streaked, confused rage. Criminal? The DA is arresting them both tomorrow, for embezzlement, wire fraud, and grand larceny. They were planning to drain your accounts, drain the firm, and disappear. To where, we're not sure. But they were fleeing. Sarah was silent for a full minute, her mind processing the sheer scale of the betrayal. It was not just a weak man having an affair. It was a calculated, sociopathic plan to erase her. When she finally looked up, her tears were gone. Her eyes were not the eyes of his daughter. They were his eyes. They were the eyes of a lawyer, a fighter. The victim was gone, and her father's daughter had taken her place. Tomorrow? She asked, her voice a cold, sharp whisper. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the firm. No, Sarah said. No? What do you mean, no? I want to be there, she said. Sarah, no, it's not a good idea. It's a police matter. He proposed to her while I was having his baby, Sarah said, her voice dropping to a terrifying calm. He stole my money. He wished me dead. I am not going to be the sick, weak wife hiding in her father's house. I want him to see me. I want her to see me. I want them to see me standing there, holding my daughter, when they are put in handcuffs. Mark looked at his daughter, and for the first time in 2 weeks, he felt a flicker of pride so fierce it almost made him smile. All right, Mark said, get some sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. The next morning, David Lowe walked into the 40th floor lobby of his investment firm, feeling invincible. He had just gotten off the phone with Emily. It's all set, she'd chirped. The final transfer cleared the offshore account. We have 4.2 million. The tickets to Zurich are booked for tonight. Just one more day of playing the game, babe. And Mark? And Sarah? David had asked, a knot in his stomach. Forget them? Mark is a senile old man, and Sarah's a coddled idiot. They're sitting in his house playing Happy Family. By the time they realize the accounts are empty, we won't be here, she'd laughed. David had smiled. He'd been worried about Mark, but his silence over the last 48 hours had been reassuring. The old man had probably just given up, deciding to protect his daughter from the shame. He adjusted his $5,000 tie. He was, he thought, a master of the universe. He'd walk in, tender his resignation, and be on a plane by 8 p.m. He strode into the gleaming glass and steel offices. He was surprised to see the main conference room dark, but he saw Emily waving at him from her office, a triumphant smile on her face. He walked toward her. As he passed the conference room, the doors slid open. David! David froze. It was Mark's voice. He turned. Mark was standing there, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit, and beside him, Sarah. David's blood turned to ice. Sarah was standing there, looking radiant. She was not the pale, sick woman he had left. She was dressed in a sharp, cream-colored dress. Her hair and makeup were perfect. She looked powerful. She looked beautiful. And in her arms, wrapped in a pink blanket, was Lily. What are you doing here?" David stammered. "Sarah, you shouldn't be. You're not well." "Oh, I'm feeling much better, David," Sarah said, her voice clear and cold. I wanted to see you. We wanted to see you." "Right, Lily?" Emily Vance came running out of her office. "David, what's going on? Who? Oh my God!" She stopped dead. She saw Sarah, she saw the baby, and she saw Mark, and she saw the look on Sarah's face. "Emily Vance," Sarah said, as if greeting a stranger at a party. "I've heard so much about you. That's a beautiful ring. Tiffany's, isn't it? 3-carat cushion cut. You have expensive taste." Emily's face went white. She looked at the ring, then at David. You told me." "He told you a lot of things, didn't he?" Sarah said, stepping forward. "Did he tell you he loved you? Did he tell you I was an obligation? Did he tell you he wished I would just simplify things?" I don't know what you're talking about," Emily stammered, backing away. "David," Mark said, "I believe you have a meeting with the board. They're all waiting for you. They're very excited to go over your portfolio, specifically the Vance Low Capital part of it." David's world imploded. This was not a domestic dispute. This was an ambush. David lunged at Mark. "You old bastard, you ruined me." He never made it. 2 men in dark suits stepped out from an adjoining office. They were not board members. "Mr. David Lowe," the first man said, flashing a badge, "you're under arrest for wire fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." He grabbed David's arm and whipped it behind his back, slamming him against the wall. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed in the silent office. "Emily Vance," the second detective said. Emily screamed and tried to run. The detective caught her easily. "You are under arrest for the same. You have the right to remain silent." "It was him!" Emily shrieked, her composed, shark-like demeanor shattering into pure, pathetic panic. "It was all him. He made me. He forged my name. I'm a victim. He's a monster." "Shut up, Emily," David roared, his face pressed against the drywall. "No, I won't. He told me he was leaving her. He proposed to me. Tell them, David. Tell them you love me." David just squeezed his eyes shut. The detectives hauled them both to their feet. As they were being led past, David locked eyes with Sarah. His face was a mask of pathetic desperation. "Sarah, please," he begged. "She's lying. It was all her. She's a viper. I love you. I always loved you. I was scared. Sarah met his gaze. She held it. She didn't flinch. She simply adjusted Lily in her arms. Is that her?" David whispered, looking at the baby. "Is that Lily?" "This," Sarah said, her voice devoid of all emotion, "is my daughter. And you will never, ever speak her name." She turned her back on him. Mark watched as the detectives pushed David and a sobbing, shrieking Emily into the elevator. The doors slid shut. It was over. Sarah leaned against the wall, the adrenaline finally leaving her. She looked at her father, her eyes filling with tears for the first time that day. "It's done, Dad. It's done, sweetheart," he said, putting his arm around her. "Let's go home." The garden was filled with sunshine and balloons. A banner reading, "Happy First Birthday, Lily," fluttered in the breeze. It was 1 year later. Mark's home was no longer a sanctuary. It was just a home. It was loud, filled with the sounds of a toddler learning to walk, the squeals of other children, and the laughter of friends. Sarah, dressed in a simple yellow sundress, was a different woman. The trauma had carved new lines on her face, but they were lines of strength, not victimhood. She was no longer Sarah Lowe. She was Sarah Harrington. She had taken her maiden name back, and she had given it to her daughter. Lily Harrington, who had started life as a 3-pound fighter, was now a chubby, determined 1-year-old, barreling across the grass toward her grandfather. "Papa!" she shrieked, collapsing into his legs. "There's my girl!" Mark laughed, scooping her up and spinning her around. The past year had been a brutal, cleansing fire. The trial had been swift, faced with the mountain of evidence, and Emily's false testimony that David was an abusive, controlling mastermind. The jury had been merciless. Emily's attempt to play the victim had backfired when David's lawyer produced emails from her, outlining the entire embezzlement scheme in her own words. She wasn't the accomplice. In many ways, she had been the architect. David, desperate, had taken a plea deal. He was serving 7 to 10 years in a medium-security prison for his part. Emily, who had fought the charges and lost, was serving 12 to 15. The firm had been cleaned out. Mark, as a major investor, had overseen the restructuring. He had also set up a restitution fund for the clients David and Emily had defrauded, funded by the $4.2 million the DA had managed to claw back from the Swiss account. But all of that was just noise. The real story was here, on the lawn. Sarah had finished her law degree, the one she'd put on hold to support David's career. She had just passed the bar and had accepted a position, not at her father's old firm, but as a prosecutor in the district attorney's office, specializing in financial crimes. She had found her calling. She now ran a support group at St. Jude's for mothers in the NICU, helping women navigate the terror she herself had endured. She walked over to Mark and Lily, holding a piece of birthday cake. "Someone ready for her cake?" "Cake!" Lily yelled, reaching with sticky fingers. As Sarah watched her daughter happily smear pink frosting all over her face, Mark put his hand on her shoulder. "He sent a letter," Mark said quietly. From prison. A parole hearing request, I think. I didn't open it." Sarah didn't even look up from her daughter. "Burn it." "I already did," Mark said. A photographer Mark had hired for the party was taking pictures. "Sarah, look over here. Big smile." Sarah looked up, her face bright and open, her smile genuine. She was holding her daughter. Her father was at her side. She was surrounded by people who loved her. The betrayal had been a defining moment. Yes, it had been an amputation. But she had learned to walk again. She was not a victim. She was not the woman whose husband. She was a survivor. She was a mother. She was a lawyer. And as she looked at her daughter, she knew, with absolute certainty, that the best part of her life was just beginning. The story of Sarah, Mark, and David is a brutal reminder that the people we trust the most have the power to hurt us the deeply. But it's also a story of incredible resilience. It shows us that betrayal, no matter how deep, does not have to be the end of our story. Sarah's life was shattered, but from those broken pieces, she and her father built something new. They built a fortress of love for baby Lily, and a fortress of justice against the man who tried to ruin them. They proved that the strongest revenge is not hatred. It's healing, it's success, and it's living a life filled with joy. What did you think of Mark's cold, calculated plan? Do you think Sarah was right to confront David at his office? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs to hear a story of survival. And most importantly, subscribe to our channel for more real-life dramas, just like this one. Thank you for listening.